Welcome to another conversation on Awaz-e-Haqiqat, which stands for the voice of truth. I'm your host, Chris Malika, and depending on whichever part of the world you're listening to me from, today or tonight, I come to you with a very, very important conversations that I believe don't occur often, but should be had more regularly, which is mental health for men. South Asian men, any race you want to insert into the bracket. I think the issue is fairly global. But how do men cope with their mental health? How do they talk about it? Why is there a stigma about men talking about their mental health? And on that note, I am so glad and so honored that I have a special guest with me. I have Fairlo Wijesinghe who's joined me. He's also based in Melbourne. So Fairlo is an experienced professional in the health and aged care sectors, dedicated to compassion and reform. Having contributed to the Victorian Royal Commission into mental health, Fairlo blends lived experience with professional insights to drive positive change. He's passionate about community well-being, and Fairlo also volunteers with organizations such as Roses in the Ocean, Mentoring Men, and Culture Nest as well. On that note, Fairlo, very good evening. Thank you for joining me, and how are you doing tonight?
Very good evening, and thanks for the opportunity. So yeah, I'm doing extremely well.
Pleasure is all mine. Thank you. First things first, Fairlo. You and I both are aware that there's quite a fair bit of stigma that discourages maybe men from seeking help for their mental health, right? How
Mhm.
can we fight against this shame or the stigma that attaches itself to men talking about their mental health?
Oh, very good question. Yes. So honestly, I think it starts with the men being real and
Mm,
accepting, and of course, it's not easy because as men we are conditioned to keep things bottled up and so I think that's one of the main reasons and which by the way is much less than when I went through my issues, you know, 15, 12, almost 13 years ago. So
yeah.
at the time, it was hard to kind of come out and or even acknowledge or no, even actually understand what was happening.
Right.
And so it's also it was the age group as well. So I was a mature man in my late 30s or 40s actually
Mm,
and when it happened. So you're right. I mean, using that I think the word stigma at that time we couldn't kind of understand what it was, but yeah, it was stigma that held the men back. And
right.
in my current work, it's sad that even after all these years, yeah, there's a fear of stigma and
Mm,
stigma as in being judged, in various ways. So if in a workplace, would they see me fit to do my job, or would they see me
mm,
fit to get the next promotion? In your circle of friends, whether you be, looked down on, or given too much sympathy.
mm,
Men had sympathy, empathy. Yes, they get
yeah.
that. So I think and of course, it's your background, where you
Right.
come from. So me, from a Sri Lankan background, it was unheard of where a man would, they just said, he's had a nervous breakdown,
Yeah.
get over it, kind of thing. So to actually explain what was happening to me, if I wasn't, you don't get over it. You
Right.
battle, win the battles, and the war keeps going on. So
Mm,
I
mm,
think so that was what it was. And then of course the word stigma came on, and then kind of we were able to actually dissect the word stigma and break it down. So
mm,
that's sort of we kind of break down the old and outdated stereotype of men,
right.
and I found it quite easier to work with the the, the Anglo-Saxon, the men, who kind of latched onto it. I struggled with the people of the South, let's say South
South
Asian
Asian,
side.
yeah.
And then of course you had the other lot of Asian group of men as well who really wouldn't even,
Yep.
and of course not many sought help. So they kind of they were reaching out to the wrong sources,
Mm, mm,
and
and
hoping that the family friends would understand it, or
yeah.
so I think that was one of the things that personally I experienced
Mm,
30 years ago, and it's still present.
Of course, of
So
course.
yeah, and
On that note, fellow, I had a friend, a male friend, tell me one day that, I can't tell my girlfriend if I feel vulnerable because I'm so scared that if I start crying in front of her, she might leave me. And there is such a pressure on the men that you can't act soft, you can't act weak because the women around you might get, oh, you're not manly enough. That's a
so
pressure.
right, so true. I heard a similar story where he this particular person actually did mention it, and this
Mm.
is this is to the partner and fiance was the actual word to use, and yeah, and it kind of backfired on him, and then it got really because she kind of felt that would there be a future? I mean, are you sure you're going to get better? Those were the questions, and
Yeah.
he so he would talk to me and say, look, do you think this would pass? And
Mm.
in my experience, I couldn't assure him that because it doesn't pass. You find the you find the coping mechanisms and you work with
Yeah.
it,
Yeah.
and you have a long period where life's good and everything's good, and then something would yeah, I'm trying to try not to use this word trigger because it's not a word that they want to use too much these days, especially in suicide prevention, because
Mm.
which that's something I do. But
Yeah.
those that word should be, because I mean it does trigger, and then you could have a good 6 months, and then suddenly you arrive at a place or you're having a conversation, and then that and then you
Yeah.
kind of, so you know how how this works. I mean, it works mentally, but it also gets you physically,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
that's when the
Absolutely.
man finds it very hard to cope.
True.
Because and most of the men are in working and successful. I've met 90% of the men I work are successful men, and
Mm.
they're kicking goals. They're kicking goals in their workplaces. They're
Mm.
bringing home the the bacon. They're doing everything. But they're paying the price for it.
Yeah.
And so yeah, that's to break that down and to try and get them, because I worked throughout all of this, but uh, I went from steady 17 years, 10 years in my workplaces to suddenly 7 jobs in less than 5 years, because
Mm.
whenever I felt I would resign uh,
Yeah.
due to stigma. I couldn't give I never gave any of them a reason. One
Mm.
workplace, the HR manageress, who was awesome, figured it out, and she said,
Mm.
let's work with this. But I said, no, please let me resign. Let me have a break of. But within 2 months, I was back again. I'm fine and get another job. And you go to that job,
Mm.
you're performing well. So even the workplace wonders what's wrong with this guy. Is it more money? What does he actually want? But it's just that you can't cope because a part of your life is falling,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
that mainly happens at home.
Yep. Agreed.
And so yes, so that's another sort of uh, the, yeah, and I think we could sort of that leads to the pressures that we put on ourselves.
Yeah.
There's a lot of pressure out there in the world, and everyone
Mm.
has individuals have pressure,
Mm.
but some of it we just bring it onto
Good
ourselves,
enough.
and men do.
Speaking, yeah, speaking of precious fellow, what are some of the specific societal, call it pressure, call it expectation that men, and in this conversation, just for the sake of it, South Asian men get upon themselves? What are some of those? What do they look like?
As in, I mean, I think work pressure is one of the main causes of uh, mental health, and then that
Mm.
would be anxiety, which then leads to depression,
Mm.
and then how you, because anxiety grabs you, and then you
Yes.
start to have a fear because it's physical, so you get the tightening, and then you can't function, so and then you're fine, but you have this fear, so you try not to stress over things, but it's very hard in your workplace. I think workplace, and depending on the jobs you do, the higher the positions, the more stress you have. You know,
Mm.
if you're managing, if you're in charge of budgets, so all that adds into it. So as a I would put work pressures from my lived and living experience. I love. I always say that it's not just lived experience, it's living experience because
Mm.
I hear stories all the time. So it's
Yep.
I'm living it, right? So work pressures, of course, which then is financial because you're worried about, if I don't have a job, what happens? There are the family issues. There are the uh, com competitive issues, which is not just competing with the world and the friends and these partners between partners. And I hear that story a lot,
Okay.
where the female is obviously the breadwinner when you look at it, and
Mm.
there's that part of it, and uh, also the pressures of men sharing workloads and doing stuff and not feeling good enough and not feeling that they're good at it because they feel that the women are always better at that and mothering, and these are good fathers, they are doing a good job,
Mm. Mm.
and sometimes their partners talk to me and they will
Right.
say, he just thinks that he's not doing a good job and he's putting it on himself. So I think that society, I think there is that failure, and people do fail from time to time, and it's
Mm.
just I don't like the word failure because I think you they attempt, and some men take it very hard. It could be something very simple like in a sport or in something, and then suddenly they in a cricket club they would be the highest scorer and they're
Mm.
really. But of course, another guy comes on board, joins the team, and he takes over. And these little things bother them.
Mm.
So those little things cause them anxiety, and it's unbelievable some of the stories that I hear. I go like,
True.
really, But I think I know I take some little things that are not even worth mentioning, but I'll stew over it and think about it, and But I right now I have I'll take a deep breath and I will
Mm.
say, look, this is silly, but
Yeah.
it took me 10 years to tell myself that because
Mm.
I but I still do it. Something very, very, very minor that no one would even notice, but I notice it.
You do that. Yeah.
So yeah, I had one client who had to make a presentation at his workplace, and
Mm.
this was the start of his mental illness because he had to do this presentation, and he just it was he everything went wrong for him from the audio, from everything, and he not a guy who likes to blame. So
Mm.
he and everybody in the audience, I'm sure I wasn't there, but the audience, or everybody understood, even the management understood that it wasn't all his fault, but he took it on himself. And then, of course, there was a comment from one person that and so they took him off that and said,
Mm.
you need to practice more before you actually. And he was passionate. He wanted to sell, what he was doing. He was a man in IT, and so he knew to do the job. He just couldn't present it in a
Yeah.
way, and he just couldn't get up from bed the next day. And then it just went on, and the family got concerned, and he saw his GP,
Yeah.
and of course, then that led to another, and then the man was highly medicated, and then he was fine. But then he just got in. And when I asked him the question as to why did you to leave the job that you loved and passionate, and then he told me that this was what happened, and
Mm.
so I mean something as simple as that, he couldn't brush it off, and it affects the man because we have, I think, men, speaking for myself as well, we have a certain kind of pride. We are very competitive in
Yeah.
with men.
Mm.
Men compete with men, even conversations and stuff like that,
Mm.
and
Mm.
that affects us. So we are more, what's the word? More vulnerable to. I think that's the mind. I mean,
Yeah. But well, these are some of the societal pressures that you guys put on yourself, right? But has it anything also to do with the way we are raised in the South Asian society, right? We have been told from very young age, you have to save, you have to buy a house, you have to buy a car, you have to score. There's always been this comparison in school. Do you think upbringing also contributes to this pressure?
definitely. And what happens is, so you don't realize all what's being told to you as a child, or
Mm.
when you're growing up, and then suddenly you get to a certain age, and then you haven't achieved those things.
Yeah.
So you get really busy, and you're going for those goals that that's in there. It's at the back of your mind, and then
Mm.
suddenly you think, I'm 40, I'm 45, and I you know I don't kind of still have got a mortgage. I don't have that investment property. I have there are men who say that they felt that they should have had three kids and they just had the one, and these things. So this is because the parents had said, you got to have at least two. You shouldn't have. These are stories that have been told to me,
Yeah.
like
Mm.
shouldn't just have the one because that kid and he so that story was very hard, very very for me it was quite I took it because I have one child, but that's out of choice, right? And I was able to console him by saying, mate, that's fine. I'm
Mm.
a child, I have one child. So
Yeah.
obviously if I had issues I wouldn't have had one child, I would have had two. So and
Mm.
that was what his family, and that was sort of brought up at Christmas, at wherever, like, constantly, you should have another, you should have another.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
that was one of the starters. So yes, we definitely, and we have, that's the way we were brought up. We had to
Mm.
be the breadwinner. We had to, I mean, in our time, our parents, our moms, and they all stayed at home, and dad provided. They cooked, they cleaned, they kept a beautiful home, and it still happens. It's I mean, even in Australia,
Mm.
I know relatives and friends where they have not let their wives go to work. They're intelligent ladies. They don't go to work because for some reason
Yeah.
man
Okay.
takes control.
Mm.
And of course they might do something at home like babysitting or something, just to have a bit of you know
Yeah.
uh, or make food and that kind of stuff. Just but they don't get out into the workforce. So and then there's that stimulation because you come home working in and then there's you unwind to a wife who doesn't kind of understand what's happening. She doesn't take public transport. She doesn't work
Mm.
in this environment. So then you find that there's no point in So that happens, and
Mm.
I have the opposite, which is great. We both work, so when we come back, we have our stories to tell, and it's a
Yeah.
stimulating conversation. But I
Yeah.
have friends who say, like, they'll call you and they'll have a long chat, and I know more about his work than his
The
wife.
partner.
And
Mm.
he says there's no point. And I sometimes say, have you discussed this with so and so? And they go like,
Mm.
she wouldn't get it. So, but then again, I said, why don't you let her go to work? But then
Yeah.
his background is like, I don't know, she doesn't drive, so I don't want her taking the train, and the job she gets are in the city, and I don't want her traveling, and it's men try to be more protective.
Mm.
Well, some men are protective, and for various reasons. They're protective because they don't want them to fall or hurt themselves, or they're jealous, or they don't want the women to have a broader, understanding of the world.
Yeah.
So and all that they bring it down themselves. So and that is all taught to us. Because I have quite a few of my clients range mainly from. I mean, I have a couple of clients from India, and then I have Sri Lanka, but I also have the Anglo-Saxon.
Mm.
Don't get me wrong; they have the similar pressures put on them because
Mm.
this is a way of thinking of the 60s.
Yeah.
Men who are now actually getting into the 50s and 60s have these issues because it was told to them,
Mm.
or they still get told, like, why do you do all this housework, because their mothers never did that. Their fathers brought and the father's side,
Right.
and
Mm.
so they feel they come up with some of these stories, and definitely, as you pointed out, it
It
is
is
from
wrong.
childhood,
Mm.
and
It's,
we carry that
yeah. Yeah.
and then it comes to the surface at an age when you don't least expect it.
Yeah. As I keep saying everywhere, that we have a lot of unlearning to do, but we don't want to unlearn. And that's where the problem starts sometimes.
We here I like to go out to the parents and actually, so I do some multicultural work,
Mm.
which is diverse families, and trying to talk to the parents who and break the stigma and break all that down with the parents, and
Mm.
it's kind of working, because they kind of understand it, but they're willing to accept it with everyone else other than their own,
Yeah. True.
and
True.
that's another.
That's a problem.
So
This is a Pandora's box of problems, fellow. I think one conversation is not going to cut it. We
I
need
think we
multiple.
need people like you to bring it, yeah, and this kind of conversation should be, had more often and more
Often. Yeah.
openly. And it's not an easy one. I
Mm.
struggled, so it was like a coming out party for me. I was told by, so I did it in groups, and they were like, keep it quiet, mate. You don't want to let.
Mm.
And I said, no, I can't keep it quiet. My behavior has changed, and people are
Right.
speculating. They're talking, and I knew they were talking, behind my back because of
Yeah.
my behavior. And this is
Mm.
me fighting a battle that's raging inside.
Mm.
So and of course people start to notice it, but they never get it, and they don't
Yeah.
never get down
Yeah.
to
True.
that. So
True.
uh, coming out is difficult, and I think a lot of guys in denial.
Mm.
They you tell them, and they don't want to see their GP. They don't want to see their GP for anything physical. They will complain. They will say, mate, I've got this, and they go like, mate, that's dangerous. You need to go. And I mean, we hear stories with everyone, people of guys who go at the last minute and find out that there's gone too late
Oh
for
my God.
something
Mm.
physical. So this kind of thing, they
It's
will
meant.
avoid as much
Yeah.
as they can.
Yeah.
Uh, and the latest thing is there's a fear of medication. There's a fear of getting, institutionalized or hospitalized.
Mm.
And there's a huge fear happening now, which wasn't there
Mm.
before. So for that reason as well, they hold back.
Yeah.
And so providing safe places, you can't have a safe place that's attached to a hospital.
Mm.
We do
Mm.
have them in Melbourne, and they don't go there because they know that if they go there and they have there's a nurse there, and the next minute you're through ED or triage, then you're gone, and then you're on meds, and then and that's something. So sometimes all they need is just to have a chat,
Exactly.
a bit over.
Mm.
So yeah, the lived experience is really really coming through as a need,
Mm.
and I think we need to foster that.
Yeah. On that note, fellow, obviously the support from your partner, friends, and family is very, very crucial just to be able to have a chat. But my question to you is, you were talking about coping mechanism that you take deep breathing, and all of that. What are some of the other coping mechanisms you can suggest which are maybe gender neutral or men can implement in their lives?
Well, the most of it that the because I do men's work, I keep repeating it's very gender neutral. So
Mm,
and
mm,
and when you're in it, I mean, I have been I've been hospitalized or institutionalized twice, and I did it both times. I did it on purpose. I checked in the first time. I just told my family I'm going away for 2 weeks. And where are you going? And I said, this is where I'm going, and please, I isolated myself from my friends and family because I
mm,
wanted to find a network of people who were similar, and so that was gender neutral because we had all these, and so that
yep.
that was a great network of people who understood and were in sort of uh, different we are individuals, so we had different issues, but we all came together as not understanding what was
Mm,
happening to us because we really don't know what's happening to us.
yep.
So the yeah, just go back on your question. It was
Just what are some of the coping mechanisms you
a
would
coping
advise?
intelligence as well. So this is for me, and I sort of you need to have some sort of spirituality. It doesn't, things like I mean, I would scoff at. I mean, I coming from a background of Sri Lanka. I mean, I always respected yoga. I respected, you know, the Tai Chi and stuff. I learned here that they were doing so physical exercise
Mm,
is something that sort of helps you. Uh, Starting a routine, disciplined routines where you have
mm,
an alarm that says, look, get up, have a shower.
yep.
Wouldn't believe a warm shower gets you up and you're ready. And because you've got up, you've woken up and said, no, I'm just gonna, so
Yep.
you have to keep little notes for yourself, and then you have to say to yourself, look, I want to get better. I want to do away with meds because while you're on meds, you're functioning, but
Mm,
you're not functioning. It's the meds that are functioning in you.
yep.
And no one realizes that those meds are, you take them every 24 hours, but after a period of 19 hours, they wean
Fair
the
enough.
cells off your body, and that's when you go through this, the
Mm,
tremors. You do all that, but you try to sleep it and sleep it over. But when you wake up, you just don't want to. and that's when the ideation of all sorts of stuff come past your mind, and you start to think, am I, would the family be better off? So those are the things. And so you have to actually get your mindset trained, that, no, they won't be better off.
Mm.
So you got to get a more selflessness, or not selfish, because you kind of, people think it's selfish when you it's not.
Yeah.
It was out of, you want to remove yourself because you're creating so much.
Mm.
So you got to really, I mean, with me, I actually studied mental health, and I mean, I spoke to a lot of people, found out, and I was doing this while I was working.
Mm.
And I think it's something that if you look hard at a person, you can just ask them how they are, and it's how you approach them. So, and
Mm.
then once that happened, and I felt that I had a network,
Mm.
I think that's one of the best coping mechanisms you have, because I can now pick up the phone and talk to a mate who's been through, and I
Yeah.
can just tell him, uh, mate, sorry, mate, and I know you're already at the pub, and I'm supposed to have dinner with you, but I just don't feel like coming.
Mm.
He knows. He says, mate, fine, look after yourself. We'll catch up next week.
True.
And then next week he might do that to me. So that those are all where you surround yourself with, and I know they they work for me. They work for a lot of guys now that we talk about, and so that
Mm.
is one coping, uh, kind of a mechanism. Then of course, and what they teach you about the walks, the deep breathing. I mean, the deep breathing, I do that 2 3 times a day, and it works. And I tell guys, they look at me for the first time when I say, like, and it's funny how a guy would do the deep breathing, and then go gentle, and
Mm.
they find that there is there's an effect in it. So kind of, yeah,
Yeah.
they teach you a lot of different things when you actually go to the experts. Counseling is not counseling, not as in going to a professional counselor or anything. It's like just having a chat. That's coping for me, and that's coping for a
Mm.
lot of guys. Just that
Mm.
that talking, and we tend to sometimes just meet in a pub where two blokes will just have a beer and open up, because sometimes you need
Right.
that conversation needs to be open, and sometimes it doesn't open up with a coffee. With blokes, it doesn't.
Mm.
With I do have a couple of females as well that I work with,
Right.
and it's coffee, you know, coffee, and then you start chatting, and then sometimes it's 3 hours and you're still talking, and but they go home with a load that they have unloaded,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
of course, we are trained not to take that load on, uh, in a way, but they go home,
Yeah. Yeah.
with an empty trolley, but
Mm.
because they brought a full trolley, and that is so they are all I think individuals find a way, but you need to find
Mm.
that way, and
Absolutely.
uh, yeah, there's a lot of experts out there who will give you, and you shouldn't, disregard any of them, because
Mm.
you got to try, and some of it won't work for you, but there'll be something that will work for you, like
Well, yeah.
going swimming. Uh, I used to go, I mean, I used to go to the hydrotherapy pool simply
Mm.
because there were older people there, and people that, were I was an able-bodied person in a hydrotherapy pool, and that inspired me. And then you start talking to people, and so that was coping. And
Mm.
it became a habit. You form a habit, and you go there, and that sort of, so awareness of your situation, counting your, I use the word, blessings, because you count that, and you go like, hey, why, gee, I've got so much. So the pros and cons,
Yeah. Yeah.
writing that down. I mean, if you can journal
Mm.
and read
Yes.
it every end of you read it on a Sunday, you
Mm.
start on a Monday and read it on a Sunday, and then you go like, what the hell? I've had better days than, I've had.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So, these are coping mechanisms that they don't kind of teach you in a sort of, in a clinical kind of way. They would give you the normal stuff, and then
Mm.
these are things that have come through lived experience, to groups of people chatting and telling us, you should try this,
Mm.
and
Mm.
because of that lived experience, and because they assuring you it worked for them, you might have a bit of a snigger at it at the time and say, you're crazy, man, I'm not going to do that, but you go
Mm.
and you do it, and it's
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
it works, like that,
True.
like the hot showers, like what my man said, man, just get up, how far
Mm.
is your bathroom? I said, no, it's an ensuite. I said, just get up, turn the hot water, just stand there. Don't worry about the water bill, just stand there. And you know what? That works.
Yeah,
That
it
works.
does.
That kind of, I don't know how it works, but it works. You come out of it and you're like, all right,
Feel
well,
energized. Yeah.
yeah, energized. What have I got to do? And then you find something to do.
Mm.
You know? So
Yeah.
I think there's that, and yeah, I think spiritual, whatever religion, whatever, that's important because in that sense you can, you can find a bit of that, and you might
Mm.
find that with your family, and you have friends, and it's funny because it's not it's not the religion you've been brought up with. You seek
Yeah.
another, and you learn something from it, and you go,
Right.
wow, it works.
Absolutely.
Philosophy, you know what I mean? And
Yeah. Yeah.
reading, I think, keeping away. Well, what not to do is keep away from social media, keep away from that kind of stuff. Uh,
Mm.
that was one of the things. Like, I mean, people go, "What happened?" So now I just sort of need a break, and I still do. I still take a break from social
Right.
media because I kind of feel that too much of it, and you take a break, and yeah, life is good because you can concentrate on something else.
Yeah. True.
So
True.
yeah, you have to find it.
Yeah, I agree. But coming back to what you mentioned earlier, Fellow, like the need of having open conversations, safe spaces, I'm going to blend it with one more question is, as women in the men's lives, how can we or what can we do to help so that the men in our lives feel safe, do not feel judged, and feel comfortable opening up about their mental health to us?
If women only know the role they play a very, very big role in the men's health. Believe
Mm,
me, they do. And so some women are great. They will reach out when they kind of know that their husband's sort of seeing someone, a mentor, and it's kind of not always possible because we have protocol to follow and whatever.
yeah.
But sometimes the man would give you permission. Do you mind, or we said, why don't we just go to dinner or something so we can meet my
Mm,
wife, whatever. And I've had several thank yous from wives who have called me. I've never seen them, but they talk to me and they see the difference because I have actually. Uh, and the men give you permission. They give you permission to tell their wife.
mm.
They can't tell her. And
Oh,
and, and then you see you hear the shock in their voice, like, what? That I go, yeah, well, that's
mm,
probably triggering things off, or well, I had that. I had my wife in denial. I'm not ashamed to say, and she knows that she
mm,
regrets. But because she saw a strong man who came to this country, with 500 pounds from the UK, and he made what he made, and he did what he
mm.
did. And for her, it was a strong man. He was,
Yeah.
and when I started, I cried for a while, but then I went on meds, and then I stopped. Then I had no
Mm.
feelings at all. I was numb.
Yeah.
So she saw all that, but she still was in denial. So that actually it really made me aggressive, angry, hurt to think that the closest person to me couldn't, you know. So
Yeah. Mm.
and then through education and reading up, she understood it, and now I get she just looks and she'll go like, that's fine, she kind of knows it, and so I get that support. But at
Mm.
the start it was very hard. So I think it is, women can help a lot because a lot of the guys. So I do the men's table as well. So men's
Yeah.
table is like 12 guys get together once a month. We
Mm.
sit there and all we do is like we cry, we do whatever, like old grandmas. It's funny, and each one's given 20 minutes. And if you're having a good week, you will give your 20 minutes to the other guy, so
Right.
he's got 40 minutes to tell his
Yeah.
story.
Yeah.
A lot of them are to do with their partners, their spouses, their
Mm.
wives, of course children, and it's I think the men need to be supported, uh,
Yeah.
in the sense, like, because children can divide parents, because
Mm.
there's a softer one, and then that sort of So, if the parents parent together and have speak the same thing, those men feel more supported. So I sometimes, and we have to let them know. And all this happens with the permission of the man. And it's funny, but there are a lot of men who give you permission to talk to their wives, and you go like, why the hell can't you have said that to them? Or
Yeah. Yeah.
they don't feel comfortable to speak that. So women can, well, I always say, if you always admired my smile, but you never looked in my eyes. And I have dug up photos from the past because we were quite socialites. We were
Mm.
always out, and there's just, so many photos that came in the community papers, and we were like the couple because we're kind of, and I pulled out photos and said, you see that photo? Look in the
Yeah.
eyes. I was going through something, but you didn't, because I was an actor. I always say I should have got an Oscar during my time, but I didn't sort of. So men,
Yeah.
and I think if women can help a lot. They can
Mm.
do a lot, but it's not their fault that they don't. But then, as the man slacks off due to his battles, they take on a bigger role. So they
Right.
take responsibility and stuff. And obviously, this goes unnoticed. I mean,
Mm.
sometimes women have to carry the whole home on the and they do that, and they're doing the right thing because they got kids, they got to do all that, and they'll say like, all he does is sit in front of the TV, or all he does is hang out with his mates, but he's running away from something, and they're carrying the load, so they don't actually stop to, and then it's not a it's not their fault, but
Mm.
they have to do it. Someone's got to do
Yeah.
it,
Yeah.
and they take on that role. So they tend to take on the some of those roles without thinking and
Mm.
seeing it through. So I think, yeah, awareness. I mean, that it could happen to your husband, it could happen to your son,
Yeah.
or it can happen to your daughter. I mean, I have, and that's the thing. They have to realize that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yes.
Hello, thank you for the comment. But one last question is, what would be your one-liner message to our audience? And if anyone wants to connect with you, where can we find you on, let's say, Facebook?
Yeah, Facebook, Fairlo Wijesinghe, easy to find.
Oh,
I'm on there. One liner. Okay, I should have written something there. Oh, I think I do. Just give me.
our two
Yeah.
lines are also okay. Just a message.
Well, I'd like to build a world where men can speak freely,
Mm.
uh, maybe love deeply, and
Yeah.
live fully without fear of judgment.
Mm.
This is a problem with men.
Yes, it's a big
So
problem.
yeah. So if we can do that, and I think, so that would be my my wish, my one liner, my yeah. I would really, and that's what I'm working towards. And
Absolutely.
I wish I had that support when I needed it. So,
Mm.
but it's good. I've come good. So we should talk about. I'd like to bring awareness of workplace, and also just having obtained a Cert 4 and diploma in mental health. I feel I don't believe that does, it doesn't help, because it's kind of staged. You get the theory, you qualified,
Yeah.
and then you go out there. If you don't have a lived experience,
Mm.
you lose because it's all kind of almost staged. Which is, it's good to have the knowledge and have you need to update. You have to keep yourself, because you know how safe languages, all that things keep coming up all
Yeah.
the time.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
luckily, I'm associated with organizations which would send me the information and update me on stuff.
Mm.
Uh, and yeah, so I think we should talk a bit more about that on another time. And
Sure.
thank you very much for bringing,
Oh,
because this is my passion, simply because, I want to help people. And
absolutely.
yeah,
And I believe that we should have more of these open and safe conversations because so many of us wage these internal battles. They shouldn't be doing it by themselves. We can all be a little empathetic and supportive of people around us. So, thanks to you for saying yes to this conversation. To our audiences, if you feel any of this is I mean, it has triggered you or you want to take a break, so pause the conversation, go back and come back to the conversation when you feel like it. This was Fairlo. He gave us a lot of his expertise, his journey, and how do you work around with mental health. Seek help. It's okay to ask for help. And for the women around the men, please look for the inner details. Look into the eyes, as Fairlo mentioned. The eyes never lie. And Fairlo can be found on Facebook if you ever want to contact him for further information. And if you've got any thoughts or feedback on this conversation, please write to me. I can be also found on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram. So thank you, Fairlo, once again, and I'm sure we'll connect later for another part of the conversation to be followed.
Definitely. Have a good night.